Greetings. I am Zan Varnado Johns, a poet. I'm pleased to share a poem with you that I wrote as a tribute to my brother when he retired from Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. The title of the poem is The Man You See, a tribute to Darryl at retirement. The man you see was once a child with promise. Like all children, he deserved a shot. The man you see is my brother. 6 of us sprouted from the same branch of a tree deep rooted in love. Money was fairly lacking, though the man you see never lacked confidence or love. He traveled an extraordinary journey from Hammond, Louisiana, Mooney Avenue, to our nation's capital. The man you see picked strawberries. His school year began late to reduce exposure to unbearable heat. The man you see is never late, nor does he shy away from heat. He mowed lawns, or better said, he cut grass before the days of power mowers and water bottles. Nearly dehydrated on a sweltering afternoon, one homeowner gave him a discarded can for garden hose water. Imagine that. The man you see was an athlete, determined and focused. He understood the nexus between effort and execution. He was advised by his high school counselor to forego college. Always the navigator of his own ship, he boldly dismissed her counsel, seeing it for what it was. The man you see was intentionally plucked like a ripe strawberry from his dispiriting surroundings. His mentor reached back for that promising young Black man and paved his road to Colorado. The man you see is a buffalo with a heart of CU black and gold. His life was transformed by education, exposure, and hard work. No stranger to heartache, the man you see embraced the advice of our Father to not only achieve greatness, but to be great. He reached back and rendered a steady current to lift the wings of so many others. He was once told that you can't save everybody. Yet, I have watched him try time and again as he relentlessly saved everybody he could. The man you see is deliberate. His every move was determined by the one he made before. He grows wherever he is planted. When life's trials found him, he found courage. With agony as his balm, the man you see clung to his branch and always found triumph. The man you see loves people. Neither status nor position can overshadow his pride in maneuvering an 18-wheeler or his love of down home blues. The man you see sheds his suits, rolls up his sleeves. He eats Louisiana gumbo and seafood outdoors while swatting mosquitoes with a smile on his face, with no complaints. The man you see harbors no bitterness. Remember that can of water on that hot summer day? Never to thirst again. The man you see secured a future where he drinks from his own well. Were that woman to visit him now, he would undoubtedly offer her some homemade strawberry wine, served in a custom designed poetic forecast wine glass. The man you see is a family man. First, a son, a brother, an uncle, later, a spouse, prideful father, and grandfather. He wears those hats like a badge of honor. The man you see takes no wooden nickels. Moreover, he is known to turn nickels and dimes and quarters into airline tickets for his mother, or to evoke $1 million smiles on the faces of young children. Darryl Wayne Varnado is the man you see. Executive Vice President, soon to be retiring. In the words of one of the greatest men I know, smiles to you, my dear brother. Thank you. That was The Man You See, written for my brother Darryl, and you are going to meet him right now. Thanks.
Darryl Varnado, you are the first, let's just say you are the first family affair interview we've done. We interviewed your sister quite a while ago, Zanita. So it's really good to talk to you, man. It's been a long time since I've seen your face, brother. How you doing?
Well, I think I'm blessed on so many levels. Doing pretty good, I must say.
Well, man. So where are you now? Where are you these days? Are you on the East
I'm
Coast
in
or?
Centerville, Virginia, Northern
Oh,
Virginia, about 12 miles from Dallas.
I know exactly where you are. My journalism career began in Centerville, Virginia. So I have fond
Okay.
memories of that place. Very nice place. It's a lot
Yeah,
different than it was about 30 years ago, but
it
um,
is a little different. I kind of like the country.
yeah, I hear you. So look, let me do this, man. Let's start with the basics. Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about the people who made you.
Well, I'm the product of my community. Um, my mother and father, uh, were strong in all of our lives. It was six of us. I was second of six, one brother and four sisters. And my parents instilled some work ethic in us, instilled the understanding that education was important and we needed to, above all else, work to get an education because that would be the foundation of what we were able to do going forward. But I must say that my community took an interest in me as they did in a lot of the kids, the African American kids back then. Um, and they took an interest in me and made certain that we stayed on the right track. Um, Early on, I remember Dr. Johnson, we called him Coach Johnson at the time because he was the basketball coach, football coach. And when I was 8 years old, he was in charge of the park that was up the street from us about a block. He was in charge of the park for the summer,
Hmm.
and he seemed to have taken a interest in me in making certain that I did the right things, that I didn't run with all of the kids doing all of the bad stuff. And there was something engaging about that because that carried on until he died. Um, he's the reason I wound up in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
But he was one of the people that was really instrumental. My football coaches, my baseball coach, a lot of my teachers, people in the neighborhood uh, took an interest. I remember there was a lady in the neighborhood. Her name was Miss Mary Wells, and she would bake me a German chocolate cake for my birthday every year.
Mm.
And I remember the first time she did it, I didn't share it with any of my siblings. I kept it quiet. And I ate the whole cake by myself in 3 days.
Mm.
And I was sick as a dog.
I bet you were.
And after that, she continued to make it every year. But then with the experience I had the prior year, I shared from that point forward. I shared my cake with my siblings. That was a rough lesson, but a lot of times you got lessons when nobody was teaching. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
It just came as a matter of course. But we had a lot of fun. A lot of fun growing up. We laughed a lot. I always say people look at my siblings and um, my siblings and me, as we are adults, and they talk about how well we get along. And I say that's because we did all of the fighting when we were kids. But we grew up supporting one another. Um, and, just the neighborhood was a
Mm-hmm.
real close knit neighborhood. And, we went to school with all Black students in a Black neighborhood up until my senior year. And we walked to school about a mile every day,
Mm.
and home a mile every day. And then my senior year, we bused to school um, because of Brown versus Board of Education integration in Louisiana schools. And that was not the best experience given what we had experienced at the all Black school.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of fights all the time. It was amazing that any learning took place, but we got through it, graduated, and uh, I headed off to University of Colorado along with Mike Nunnery, who was also in my class
Mm.
and went to University of Colorado as a direct result of Coach Johnson,
Now
Dr. Johnson.
let me back you up a little bit. Talk about being in Louisiana in the 60s and the 70s, I guess a little bit, but talk about what that was like for you, especially as a black child and the things you experienced and how did that impact the way you saw the world?
Well, it was a way of life for us. So, it wasn't that segregation was having an adverse impact on us because we had what we needed
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy ourselves and be successful.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in an all Black community. Everything we did was all Black. Didn't interact with white folk until my senior year. And, as a result, I mean, my parents, we were, like Zan liked to say, money was fairly lacking, but we didn't realize the extent to which we didn't have money
Mm.
because we always had clothing, we always had food, we always had each other, and we had love and affection in our home, and we had people who cared about us, not just in the home, but people in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the things that a kid needs, we had. Now, I have to tell you, when I'm growing up, one of the things that was important to me was I wanted to be able to move about,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a vehicle like kids today. They'll have some kind of car or access to a car. Well, that wasn't as readily available to me as I would have liked.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to look at these white kids my age had their own cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I could understand why I couldn't have one. Somebody's gonna give me a car. I worked from age 8. I picked strawberries in the fields of Louisiana. We Because African American schools, we were going to school in the summertime, and be out like September, October, November,
Mm.
so that we can pick strawberries. And I picked strawberries from age 8, where the man would come to our neighborhood, pick us up on the back of his truck at 5 a.m. And then we'd go out to the field and crawl in the fields, pick strawberries till noon. Sun beaming down on you, seems like 110 degrees every day.
Mm.
But you leave in the morning freezing to death. Um, so I did that. And then I worked uh, mowing lawns. I would do flower beds for people. Any work I could do. When
Mm-hmm.
hurricanes came, we thought that was a blessing because immediately after that there was work for days because white folks want their yards cleaned up, and so we had work as a direct result. Now, for me, other than not having full access to a car, life was pretty good. We
Mm-hmm.
saw the signs that you can't, uh, no colors allowed. We saw all of that,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't want to go there anyway
Mm.
because we didn't know it any differently. We were okay staying in our community. At least I was.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to college and I came back and I saw the signs, I'd go into every place I saw a sign that said whites on,
Mm.
just to push the envelope. But when I grew up there, it was not an issue for me. And we had a lot of uh, friends that we're connected with even today,
Mm-hmm.
which most communities, have. But considering what would have been a struggle, appeared to have been a struggle, wasn't really a struggle for us at all because we felt we were fortunate on so many levels. And you know, when I started to play ball my senior year, I was a quarterback
Mm-hmm.
at our high school, and I was quarterback my sophomore year and my junior year. I was starting quarterback. Well, when we integrated, they asked me could I do anything else, and I said I don't know. I've only quarterback. And
Mm.
then they said, well, we already have a quarterback, so I became a defensive back. Um, and then I didn't start. When we played baseball in the spring, I was the starting catcher, um, all district catcher, um, and we there was a guy when we finished playing, and I'll never forget him. His name was Jerry Bowles. He was the pitcher, white guy. And when we graduated, I'm headed to Colorado, so all of that interactions from my senior year was behind me because I'm focused on heading to Colorado. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they asked me, these white guys asked me to play with them in Ponchatoula, which was about 5 miles away from where we grew up. They wanted me to play American Legion ball with them that summer. And on the senior varsity, there were only two of us, two African American guys on the team, two or three. And when we were headed to Ponchatoula, they asked me if I would play with them, and I said, "Well, I'd love to, but the practices were 5 miles away, and I could not. I had no transportation to get to and from, nor would I have transportation to get to the games."
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Bowles, who had had a Volkswagen van his whole senior year, he
Mm.
said, "Man, I'll come pick you up, take
Nice.
you home every day." And he did that every day.
Mm.
Um, he picked me up for the games and brought me home every day. And that's how I was able to play through the summer. Ironically enough, when I left Hammond, I haven't seen Jerry Bowles since the last game we played.
Mm.
Haven't talked to him. And that's one of the things I vowed that I will do. I will reach out to him when I get back to Hammond to let him know just how much I appreciated that. He never asked me for money for gas or anything. He just came pick me up every day. So, and I remember, I got to tell you this story.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we were out about 100 miles playing, and I got hurt. And my parents never, they didn't travel with the team. And the sponsors of the team had already left. They had left early, headed back. And they had already made it back to Hammond. We hadn't left yet because I'm in the hospital. And so they called my parents to let my parents know that I had been injured. And my parents, oh, well, we're going to head back. And they said, well, no, we'll ask you not to do that. We're going to turn around and go back. But they're going to bring him to the hospital in Hammond, which was where we lived. They said, we'll have the ambulance bring him back and we'll meet you at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought me back, and my mom told me the story about when the nurse came in and saw them. They said only the family could be in. That's these 3 or 4 white guys, and said only the family. Visiting hours over, only the family could visit. And the guy said, we're family. And they stayed in the hospital with me until I came to the next day.
Mm.
And those are the stories that you don't hear about. Um, and it's just that stuck with me because keep in mind, these guys, they had been partying at the game and they driven back 100 miles. Now they got to drive back to the game 100 miles and then drive back again. And
Mm-hmm.
they did that because I was injured.
Mm.
And my parents got a sense of comfort about that because they were always worried about, what are we going to do when we go off on these trips. Once integration occurred, um, the school system wasn't connected to the Black community anymore. Like the people we played ball against weren't Black communities. We played, we played in the white communities. We played the white schools. And I remember we were playing baseball in the place in Baton Rouge, and I was catching, and the people in the back, they kept agitating the hell out of me. They say the N word this, the N word that, and they just saying it to me. I mean, they're like about 8 feet, 6 to 8 feet behind me, and
Mm-hmm.
they said it to me constantly. And then I didn't say anything. I just kept playing, and then I hit a double, wind up on second base, and then when I got out there, I shook my crotch up.
Mm.
Now think about Emmett Till.
Mm-hmm.
Think about Emmett Till. Now ain't no black folk around. The
Mm-hmm.
the 1 or 2 people on the baseball team
Mm-hmm.
and me. And I stood out there and grabbed my crotch, shook it at them, and these people were not happy. And when we got back to the school, my coach, who was a white head coach, said he wanted to talk to me. And he said, Darryl, I saw your little gesture out there today. He said, we don't want to do that. He said, I can imagine how you felt. I said, no, coach, I doubt that you can imagine how I felt. And he said, well, what did that gain? I said, well, I felt pretty good. And he said, but that's not who you are. I said, well, it felt pretty good doing it. They would agitate me the whole game and nobody said a word. Not a member of my team, nor a member of their team, including you, coach.
Mm.
And he went on to tell me that my role is to play the game, ignore what's happening in the stands. And I said I did that for the most part, but I just got tired of it. And then I kind of dismissed him as a white dude not understanding what's happening. And so I get to school the next day, and my African American coach from our black school
Mm-hmm.
said he want to talk to
Mm.
me. And I went to him and said, Coach Hill told me about your little incident yesterday.
Mm.
And I explained to him what was happening. He said, look, I don't care. Don't you ever do that again, which is the same thing the white coach doing. He
Mm.
said, don't you ever do that again. He said, your job is to play the game. Ignore what's happening in the stands. Don't ever do that again. It's not who you are. It's not how we want you to play. And you do what's best for your team. Now, ironically enough, coming from Coach Steptoe, my African American coach, it was easier to hear and understand
Mm-hmm.
and I embraced it, because that's who he was. But then when I walked away from that, I asked myself, why didn't I embrace it when the white guy told me the exact same thing?
Mm-hmm.
He even told it to me the same way,
Hmm.
but I didn't want to hear it. But when Coach Steptoe told me, I heard him loud and clear. So what it gave me immediately was an understanding that there are things we can learn independent of who's the player teaching it.
Hmm.
In this case, this white man was telling me something. I should have listened. I should have heard it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was too emotionally caught up in the fact that he was not black.
Right.
And fortunately for me, Coach Steptoe called me the next day, told me the exact same thing. And I appreciated the conversation. I embraced it and I understood it. But again, I walked away with a valuable lesson. And that is, we can learn something from a fool.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn not to be a fool.
Hmm.
So make sure we pay attention to the messages that's being given us, um, independent of from where they come. So back to the question that you asked me, how was it for me?
Yes, sir.
It was a lot of fun. I worked hard um, because I helped support the family. I worked hard and I give my mother half of whatever I earned. Um, by the time I turned 13, the school schedules for us were aligned with white kids, so we no longer were available to pick strawberries. But I did try to go in the morning before school. I
Mm-hmm.
did it one day, and the people that I went with were going to stay all day. They weren't going to go to school. They had a car, so we had driven out, and they didn't want to bring me back. They wanted to keep working because the strawberries were plentiful. I say, no way in hell, my daddy will never understand me picking strawberries, quitting school to pick strawberries. You got to take me home. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the last time I picked strawberries.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was valuable lessons in all the things that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my siblings, we try to support one another. Friends in the community, we try to support one another. Um, we knew we had each other
Mm-hmm.
um, against all of the odds. Um, it, it was a lot of fun. I didn't know how bad off we were until I left and went to San Francisco the
Mm-hmm.
summer after my junior year. I spent the summer there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came back, schools integrated, and then I went to Colorado. Never returned to live.
Now, why Colorado? Did you have other options, or what was it about Colorado that called your name?
Well, I grew up going to Grambling because everybody I knew, that's where we were going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up, I'm headed to Grambling. 2 weeks before Grambling started, well, when Coach Johnson left Hammond and went to Colorado to work on a PhD. And
Oh.
the summer of 69, I mean, the fall of, no, spring of 1970,
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting my times mixed up. It was 69, spring of
Okay.
69. He headed to Colorado. And when he got there, he started contacting me about coming to Colorado. And I kind of ignored him because I'm going to go to Graham and play baseball. And 2 weeks before school started at Grambling, I'm going to the post office to send a letter back regarding housing. And I get to the post office and I see Coach Johnson on the second level coming out the door. And so I backed up because I didn't want to talk to him because I knew what he was going to talk to me about. So I backed up. Well, when I started to back up, he saw me, flagged me down. But I can't ignore him now. So I pulled back in. I pulled back in and got out the car and we talked. And within 20 minutes, he had convinced me I need to go to Colorado.
Mm.
That's how I got there 2 weeks before school started. I
Wow.
said, Coach, I have no money. He said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I say, I have no place to stay. He said, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And I say, Coach, I haven't even applied. He said, don't worry about it. I got applications at my house. Come by my house this afternoon. I'm leaving in 3 days. Get the applications back to me. I'm going to put this in motion as soon as I get back. I just need your word that you're coming. And I said, I'll be
Wow.
there. And that's how I got there, like in a 20-minute conversation.
So your first day there was really your first day there. You didn't even have a visit. You just showed up.
I just showed up.
What
I
was
didn't
that
have,
like?
well, he picked me up from the airport
Uh-huh.
and I had no place to stay, but I knew him. So,
Right.
I felt comfortable because of it. And Mike Nunnery, who I had gone to school with my whole life, he had
Mm-hmm.
spent the summer there.
Okay.
And I came in the fall. So Mike was there as well. And the thing I was concerned about, I had no place to stay. Well, Coach Johnson had connections with guys who played football. And this one guy, his name was Larry Thomas, he was staying with his girlfriend. So his room was vacant. So
Mm.
Coach Johnson told me to just stay in there until they could get me an assigned room. So Mike and I were assigned a room together for the fall.
Mm.
Um, but it was my first day was when I saw Boulder coming at the scenic overlook. He stopped, and I'm looking at it. It truly looked like God's country to me, and
Mm.
I thought, man, what a blessing. Now I was nervous about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had spent the prior summer in San Francisco, which
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I had left home.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some experience having left home, but coming to the Boulder campus had more people than my hometown,
Wow.
just to give you an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Even today, my hometown about 20,000, 22,000 people. The Boulder campus still has more people than
36,
my
yeah,
hometown.
37,000. Yeah.
So it was it was relaxing because wherever Coach Johnson went or whatever he did, he was successful.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it was so easy for him to convince me when I saw him face to face to convince me to come to Colorado. And rest
What
is
did
history.
so what did you do? Let's talk about your time there. First off, what did you study?
Well, I was in political science, public administration,
Mm-hmm.
and a master's. I did a master's in human resources, labor relations,
Mm-hmm.
and then I did postgraduate studies and did all the work for a PhD except dissertation,
Mm-hmm.
um, passed comprehensive exams, and that was in higher education finance. Um, when I came out of undergraduate, I went to work in human resources, and I kind of liked it. That's how I wound up studying labor relations
Mm-hmm.
and human resource management, and kind of realized I was kind of good at it, and so I kind of stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
And retired as an executive vice president and chief people officer at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So had a great career, doing that. Um, but coming into Boulder, you just in Boulder, you don't know what you're gonna do. At least I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. All
Mm-hmm.
I know is I'm here and I'm gonna graduate in 4 years. That's what I knew at the time.
Hmm.
And Coach Johnson made sure that we stayed. It was Mike and me. Made sure we stayed on the straight and narrow, not losing focus on why it is we were there, which was to get an education, get the degree.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got there, my first semester, I was homesick, um, but I ran into a guy by the name of Glenn Bailey,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a football player from New York, and he said he was a junior at the time, I think, and he said to me, he said, "Man, you got to let Louisiana go. You can't make Boulder, Louisiana." He said, "What you got to do is start enjoying what Boulder has to offer."
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that, I started playing handball, which I had never heard of.
Hmm.
Started playing racquetball, started riding bicycles 20 and 30 miles. when we didn't do that, we rode bicycles around the neighborhood. Um, started hiking, started camping, all things that were foreign to me before I came there. And
Mm-hmm.
once I started to enjoy Boulder itself, then I had a great time. It was for me uh, everything I could have asked for.
Yeah,
My
it's funny.
initial stay in Boulder was 23 years because I,
Mm-hmm.
I went to graduate school and
Mm-hmm.
I worked at the university for 10 years at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went to Coors for 10 years. So I was there from 1970 to 93 when I left and went
Mm-hmm.
to Tennessee.
Talk about what you saw on the campus. Did it change over time? The time that you were there, did it grow, evolve? What was it like that just being you in that environment for 2 decades?
What was it like for me or for the campus?
Both for campus and for you.
Well, for me, it changed because I matured. I became educated
Mm-hmm.
and increased awareness about the world, increased awareness about people, because again, my study was human resources. And I started to understand people and why they behave the way they behave.
Mm-hmm.
I started to understand racism from an education perspective, not just having lived it. I'm understanding the dynamics, the economics that's associated with it,
Mm-hmm.
why it exists, how it can continue to exist,
Mm-hmm.
how we as a people contribute to it
Mm-hmm.
without having a lot of conversation about that. So I had an increased awareness. I matured uh, significantly. I'm not going to say fast, but significantly
Mm-hmm.
over over time. For the campus was supportive of African American students. You know, we had the Black Education Program, Mexican American, Asian American, Native American, and these programs had resources to ensure that the students had what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Mike Nunner and I, another guy, went back to Louisiana to the Grambling Southern, I mean, for spring break. And on the way back, we out 150 miles from our hometown and getting in an accident and totaled the car. It was a rental car. And the police picked us up and they want to know how much money we had. They take us to the jail. So we're in the jail. That's where we spent the night.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day, guys say, well, give me your money and get on the bus going back to where you came. Now, we were happy to get out without incident, weren't happy to give up the money. And I remember I had $100 in my socks and I said, I'm not going to give that up, and I kept that. But we headed back to our hometown. Now we have no money to get back to school.
Wow.
And the Black Education Program had resources. They sent us airline tickets. That's how we got back.
Wow.
Sent us airline tickets. So we had the support we needed.
Yeah.
Um, Once I got to Boulder, Dr. Johnson, everybody was calling him Joe Johnson because he didn't have the PhD right
Mm-hmm.
off.
Mm-hmm.
They called him Joe Johnson. I kept calling him Coach Johnson because he wasn't that familiar to me where I was comfortable calling him Joe.
Right.
So I continued to call him Coach Johnson until he died.
Mm.
Even when he went to Grambling as Dr. Johnson, he was president of Grambling State University. Uh, I never stopped calling him Coach Johnson. So he introduced us to other people in the community. Uh, Miss Nylon, Nancy Mildred Nylon,
Mm-hmm.
uh, was like my mother away from home, her and Dr. Nylon. And then Marty Boldwe and her
Mm-hmm.
husband Harold,
Mm-hmm.
they were like family. And they made it about as warm and comfortable as a community can be with 10 Black families and 90,000 people, you
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, 10 Black families. That means you had 42.5 Black people, if you count 2.2 kids per family. Uh, they had about 40 people, 42 Black folk in
Mm-hmm.
Boulder. And, we were tight with them. Um, you know, had a great time. And there were white folk that he introduced us to as well that were friends of his. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a guy by the name of Jim Green who worked at IBM in human resources.
Mm-hmm.
So if we needed a temporary job in the summer or during Christmas break, Jim Green would connect us with IBM, so we had a job. So he was teaching us how to take advantage of resources, that make the connections, and then stay connected with the people because you never know if you need them. So between Marty Bowlby and Nancy Mildred Nylon and Jim Green, we had pretty much what we needed. Plus, Coach Johnson was the associate director of recreation,
Mm-hmm.
running the recreation center, and I worked for him while I went to school. I worked for him for 3 years in the
Mm-hmm.
rec center. So we had the connections, to survive. Plus, we had the Black Education Program that provided resources for us to ensure our success. Now, the institution, how did I see it change? My master's degree has Mary Berry as the chancellor of Boulder, the
Mm-hmm.
first African American chancellor. Um, so it changed to think that she was the chancellor.
Yeah.
Um, the programs, they weren't there anymore like they were in 1970 to 74. Um, the funding for it just wasn't there. And if you look at um, when we came, I think they brought about 250 Black students during that fall when I came.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 125 of us was from out of state. And a lot of the Denver people on the weekends would go back to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that were left were everybody from out of state.
Mm.
Well, that was okay because we all needed each other.
Right.
And the more you brought African American students, then that Black community wasn't as tight knitted as I remembered it. It just wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Even the students from out of state, they would go their separate ways because the Black education program was the catalyst, if you will, for all
Mm-hmm.
of these students that they brought in. And now all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden they're coming in, but they're not coming in under a single umbrella. And so the closeness of the students just weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to me, I'm in graduate school at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in graduate school, and I wasn't coming in contact with a lot of African American students, not like it was when I was an undergraduate.
Right.
Just it was different. And now you look at CU, and you look at CU administration. It's horrible with respect to the demographics. But then you look at the football program.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sad commentary. Boulder is having a spanking good time off the success of their football program.
Mm-hmm.
But look at all of the African American folk who run that program.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why is it they can attract all of those athletes, all of those coaches, all of those African American staff on the football program, but they can't throughout the administration?
Mm-hmm.
That's We are worse off today with respect to the representation than we were between 1970 and 74.
Well, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that there are actually more students there when you and I were there in the 70s than there are today, and the student population is double.
Yeah.
You know.
And I was at a conference with the director of human resources for Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the question came up about what's the issue with attracting people to your institution? And this woman raised her hand. She didn't know I was from CU. She
Mm-hmm.
raised her hand and she said, African Americans don't like coming to Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
And I raised my hand. I said, that's not a true statement. It's just not. Because in 1970, you attracted 270 students.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who came, I won't say loved it, but for the most part, 90% of the people did.
Mm-hmm.
And no one has ever contacted me and asked me to help them recruit an African American student or staff member. They only contact me for money. I brought my sister.
Mm-hmm.
I brought my niece, Marquita Myrick. At the time, it was Marquita Watkins. She got a master's, an undergraduate, and a master's degree. But nobody has ever asked me to recruit a faculty member. And I'm in the human resources business.
Mm-hmm.
No one has never invited me to come talk to the African American population about their careers and what they need to be doing and adjusting today for the world. I retired 47 years of human resources experience, and I retired as an executive vice president and chief people officer. But CU never contacted me and asked me to do anything to help them recruit anybody. And I know it works because when we first reached out to our niece, Zan and I reached out to our niece to come to Boulder, she had no interest.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed with her until we got her to say she's coming. And she came and stayed and got a master's degree. But
Just like Coach stayed with you.
that's right.
You know,
Almost
you
identical.
passed it. Yeah, you passed that on.
Yes. There's a young lady that I met. I was doing a presentation during career day in Hammond, Louisiana at Southeastern Louisiana University. She was a senior. This was in November. She
Mm-hmm.
was a senior graduating in May in
Mm-hmm.
business administration. And she asked, could she talk to me when I was done? And I said, yes. So I go into the office. She comes in. She said, I graduate in May. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was hoping you can direct. And I said, well, if you don't know what you can do, I have the answer for you. And she said, what's that? So you need to go to law school.
Hmm.
And she said, well, shouldn't I get an MBA? I said, remember, you came in, you didn't know what to do. I'm giving you the answer, law school. She said, I never thought about law school. I said, you never thought about the MBA either because you told me you didn't know what to do. I
Hmm.
said, I'm giving you the answer. I said, the answer I'm giving you is the answer I gave to my nephew who went
Hmm.
into business administration. And I told him he needed to go to law school. That's what he did.
Hmm.
So she said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you, I said, why don't you give me your number and I'll check on you in the fall. So she gave me the number. And when November came, I checked on her. I said, how's law school coming? She said, I didn't go. So you got to be kidding. She said, no. I said, what you doing? She said, well, I'm working at Target in Baton Rouge. I said, wait a minute. You gave up a legal career for a $15 an hour retail job at Target in Louisiana? She said, yeah. I said, how disappointing. And I jumped all over. And she started crying. And I said, I'm sorry, you're crying. I said, but your teacher told me you were one of the smartest people in her class. Sounds like you're not. I gave you the answer. And within 20 minutes of that conversation, almost like Coach Johnson conversation with me, she said, thank you for calling me. I'm going to law school.
Hmm.
I said, okay, now I'm going to give you my number.
Hmm.
And when November comes, I want you to call me and tell me how you do.
Hmm.
So I got the call in November. She was in law school, and she said it's hard. I said, I never told you it was going to be easy. What I told you was, if you commit yourself for the 3 years, you'll be well off for the rest of your life. And that first year students earn an average of $90,000 a year.
Mhm.
And I said, and that's what you comparing to your $15 an hour. So stay with it. So I kept reaching out to her during the course of
Mhm.
her school. And I said, when you graduate, send me a invitation. She went to Southern Law School. I said, send me an invitation and I'll come to your graduation.
Mhm.
And then I got that call in November, her second year. She said, I need your address. I'm graduating in May.
Bless her
Now,
heart.
she graduates in May. Remember, I told her she's going to make $90,000.
Mhm.
When I showed up in May, I offered her a job for $90,000. Offered her a job with me
Wow.
at Children's Hospital. And she worked with me in human resources for a year, and then she got promoted to the legal department.
Mhm.
I share that story because it's about reaching out, helping, and enticing our kids, just like Coach Johnson said to me in that 20-minute conversation, is what I did with her.
Yeah.
I shamed her into going, and now I say to her, same thing Coach Johnson said to me, help somebody else. We got to keep helping somebody else. And a lot of times, our kids aren't ready because we're not pushing them to be all that they could be, because she was content working at Target.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she goes to law school, passes the bar on her first sitting, comes to work here, takes the DC bar, passes it in her first sitting. Very talented. Now she teaches a workshop for Southern University on how to prepare for the bar.
Bless her heart.
Yeah.
That's
So,
man. You know, it's funny because I have spoken to so many folks who helped me navigate Boulder, and who were the people who did that same thing for me when I was there. Now I'm looking at you. You're one of those folks, man. You're one of those people that people don't always talk about, and one of those people who's important why you were where you were, because not only could you say it, but you lived it. You were the demonstration of it. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And just like Coach was a demonstration for you, you have been
yeah,
that demonstration for other people. Does that ever does that ever cross your mind that that gift that you have for
right.
others?
I'm just doing what Coach Johnson told me to do, which is help somebody else. He asked nothing of us. He said, you don't owe me anything
Hmm.
except help somebody else. There was a guy, his mother was my mentor when I worked at CU.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy went to law school and he was working in Greece. And the economy tanked, and he was making $26,000 a year after 10 years out of law school.
Hmm.
And his mother called me and said, my son's in Greece. He's not happy with his career. Can you help him? I said, well, let me give him a call. So I reached out to him, called him. I said, look, my person just that I had brought, the lawyer, she just been promoted to the legal department. So I got a vacancy. So I say to him, now this guy has no HR experience. I said, why don't you come interview for this job? So he comes. I say, I'm going to tell you, HR people won't like you because you have no experience. I say, but don't you pay attention to that. I'm the one making the decision. And I'm going to hire you. You just come in and talk about your experience in compliance and talk about your law degree. I'll take care of the rest. So he comes. And sure enough, they said he has no business there. He has no experience. He has no business. Yeah. I hired him. He's in her job making $90,000.
Mm.
So he go from 26,000 to 90,000.
Changed his life.
That was 8 years ago. Today, this week, he got an offer as vice president.
Mm.
And all I ask of him is to help somebody else. Yeah.
Man, what?
He'll today, he was working as a director. And
Mm-hmm.
as a director, he was earning 310.
Mm.
And this week, he got a vice president offer.
That's his heart. Man, let me
So
ask you.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, I, I find myself inspired by this whole conversation. I want to
Well,
thank you.
you
I
know,
had to stop and thank you for that because,
well,
you
you know,
know,
I think about my sister Zan. You know, I'm about to say that damn Zanita. I'm sorry.
look, look. See,
She's
we
the
used to
one in
call
a
her,
million.
we used to call her Zion because that's how she would say it.
That's
So
that
we,
southern accent.
yeah,
Yeah.
with that accent, we thought it was Zyan.
No, I'm saying, and I couldn't be any more proud of her because she came to Boulder, took full advantage of it. Um, you know, when Zan came, she was only supposed to come for the summer
Mm,
because uh, out of state tuition wasn't charged for people out of state. So I told her, why don't you come for the summer of 75, and that'll give you a summer up on your education. So when you go back to Hammond, Louisiana, you'd have a summer ahead of you.
hmm
She comes to Boulder, does great, loved it. And then I had come home, and this was the end of the summer of 75. And I'm packing up. I had just bought a new car, and I'm bringing it back. I'm packing up, getting ready to head out the next day. And Zan's sitting on the steps crying. And I said, what you crying for? He said, well, I want to go back with you. I said, Zan, we had this conversation when you went to Boulder. I said, this was a one summer thing. There's no money. You have to pay out of state tuition. And it's not like Hammond. We can't live without money. You know, you gotta have money. And she said, no, I want to go back. I said, Zan, but you knew you could. And she said, well, if I have to go to Southeastern, I'm not going to college.
wow.
And I thought, whoa, that hit me. I said, okay, get your stuff. Now my mama had said, take her with you. The Lord will make a way. I said, Mud, this is Boulder. You gotta have money, man. She said, well, the Lord will make a way. And so now I found myself making a commitment to Zane. I said, get your stuff. We'll figure something out. I said, you might have to sit out a year, but we'll figure that out when we get back. So we packed up, came on back, and the rest is history.
Mhm. And
You
look
know,
at her
and,
today.
and
And look at her
to her
today.
credit, Bill Pitts helped us out quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, Bill Pitts, Chris McCandless,
Yep.
um, you know, and you know, like I said, everybody was helping us out. Um, you know, and Zan fell in love with it, doing stuff that she hadn't done before,
hmm
enjoying herself, and she never moved back.
Yeah.
But the question you asked me originally, how is Boulder different? You don't see a lot of the ordinary people helping everybody.
Mhm.
That's what's missing. I remember I'm getting ready, I'm in the master's program, and math wasn't my strong suit. And I'm taking statistics, 600 level statistics in the master's program. And there was an Asian guy, unfortunately, I can't remember his name. He tutored me. And I wouldn't say tutored me, but that's the technical name of it.
hmm
He just sit down with me to show me how it worked. And I remember when he was explaining it to me, he explained it in language I could understand. And I remember he was talking to me about standard deviations. And he said, "What size is your neck?" And I say 17, 16, 17. He said, "Okay, let's say that's the average at 50%. He said, "There are some people whose neck's going to be 17 and 18. He said, "That's one standard deviation." He said, "Some people next going to be 22 and 23 and above. That's going to be the second standard deviation." And as he expressed it that way, I could almost see it. I walked away fully understanding. And I'd go back to him every single time, and he'd just sit down. You know, he wasn't my tutor, but he turned out to be tutoring me.
Right.
And he'd just sit down and have a conversation with me. He wasn't in the Black education program. He was associated with the Asian program, but
Mm-hmm.
I needed help, and he sat down and helped me. That's what made a difference for me. Through the master's program, I took 4 courses of statistics, 600 level and 700 level statistics. And I made 2 A's in the first 2 courses and 2 B's in the second 2. But my understanding of it was because that guy sat down when I didn't understand it, he'd just break it down to ghetto language. And now I got it. Now I got it. I can't remember his name. I can see his face, but I cannot remember his name. But I'll never forget him and what he did for me. That's what Boulder offered as I'm going through.
Right.
And I don't hear that now. It may be there and I'm too far removed, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it when I worked there.
Yeah.
You can see a lot of students had a lot. There was um, a woman named Pam. She married Charlie Bennett, and they
Mm-hmm.
live in Messiah, California. I can't remember her last name, but her first name's Pam. And I was struggling in biology, and she helped
Mm-hmm.
me. And she was a graduate student, you know. BP had the resources to do what we need to do,
Yeah.
and there was a closeness. Whenever they're gonna cut our financial aid, we all come together, go fight that. Because
Yeah.
if my financial aid's cut, everybody else's is cut too.
There you
So we
go.
were in it together. Well, you don't see that happening anymore like that. And then Boulder has people spread out. Still not a Black community.
Right.
It's spread out, but the closeness, like you don't see Miss Nylon, you don't see Marty Bowlby, you don't see Ellen Tate. They may be there, but I don't see them. There was a guy by the name of George Jones,
Mm.
and George worked. He ultimately went to work for the State Department,
Mm-hmm.
and him and Coach Johnson were tight, and they were working on PhDs together. And George and Coach Johnson taught me how to play handball, and we used to play them every week,
Mm.
but we never win. And they'd always say, when are you gonna win? And all we could do was talk about we almost won, you know. But that was a game I'd never heard of, and I loved it. I played it every single day, every day. And he's still in Boulder. Uh, Carol Jones, George and Carol Jones are their names. Um, and they did a lot in the community, but it was I was more aware when I was there, when I
Yeah.
was a student. Um, And then, I brought my brother there. And Zan wasn't the only person. I brought my brother to
You
Boulder.
brought you brought half the family.
I brought everybody but one sister.
Mm.
Now, 2 of them went back, and my brother went back. But he went to school at Boulder for a while,
Mm.
just doing look, if it's good enough for me, it was good enough for my siblings.
There you go.
And it had opportunities, and we had contacts. We had contacts, and it worked
Yeah,
out pretty good.
yeah, yeah. You know what's coming next. That question, and I kind of already feel like I know what the answer is even before I ask it. Um, you're sitting in your room. You're sitting right there where you are. Young man walks in. It's 18-year-old Darryl Varnado. What kind of conversation are you having with him?
Well, I'd say have a sense of purpose, have dreams. But sooner or later, you got to convert those dreams to plans. Otherwise, they're just dreams.
Mm,
Don't be defined by other folks' impression of who you are. Know who you are. And I got personal experience from that where my counselor told me to get a job with the city. Don't even worry about college. You know, you gotta be kidding. I'm going to college. I don't know. Or when I'm applying for jobs and CU, the only work I can do for CU was in affirmative action. And said, no, I'm going to be a vice president. Maybe not here, but you may not see me that way. But that's what I'm going to be.
you see yourself.
See myself, my abilities. I see my capabilities. And there was a woman in Denver by the name of Olga Thaler. She was the director of affirmative action for the medical center. And she said to me, Darryl, you're very talented, but the university will never recognize your capability. They prefer to see you as a little boy.
Mm,
They will never acknowledge what you have accomplished. She told me that.
mm,
She said, that just means it's time to go. She was right. So to my younger self, I'd say don't look for your validation through other people. Know who you are and what you're capable of. Be honest with yourself. If you don't have it, go get it. And remember the story I told you about the white man telling me, don't
mhm.
act like that? You won't always find the answers in our community. Get the answers wherever you can. Because that guy told me what I did was inappropriate and out of order, and he was right. Couldn't hear it though until Coach Steptoe told me the same thing.
Mm,
And Coach Steptoe said, don't ever let me hear you did that.
mm,
And so I took with me that understanding. And then Coach Johnson reinforced it with, if you want to be a CFO and there's no black CFOs, so what? There are a whole bunch of white. Go learn how to be a CFO from those white CFOs and bring it back. So know who you are, know what you're capable of. If you have shortcomings, address them head on. And if you see a naked man who's offering you a shirt, you know to keep going because there's some tricks in that bag.
mm,
If he had a shirt, he put it on. So know who you are, know what you're capable of, and live to your fullest capability. Don't stop. It may take you multiple trials. That's okay. But keep going. And if there's a message to be heard, I don't care who delivered it. If it's the right message, you better hear it. Don't give up till you get to where you're going.
thank
And
you.
then finally, I'll say what Coach Johnson said to me: help somebody else.
Mm,
If all of us help 3 people, we change life in our community.
mm,
And that's all I ask. the uh, the people I've helped. I think of the young lady who was the attorney. Think of the young
Hmm.
man who coming out of Greece.
Hmm.
I can think of other people. We didn't have time for me to list them all, but if all of them help 3 people, we've made a difference. We've made a difference.